We wonder sometimes how civilization started. How did we begin this strange, curious, and complicated journey down through time? Who started it off? And where in the world did the great foundations of our knowledge come from? Who were the first scholars? Who painted the first picture? Who wrote the first piece of music? Who was the first to find means of healing the sick, or of creating a code of laws for the benefit of humanity? We're not quite sure, but we know that these things did not come from some privileged overclass. They came through the recognition of the necessities of survival. When Hammurabi created the great code of Babylon, which was to become the basis of every moral and ethical code that ever followed, he was not able to simply copy it from something earlier. It came out of the ordinary practices of the day. He lived in a world that as we live in it, much more restricted, but still there were the token symbols of everything that was going to come. So he found out that people shoddied their goods, that they cheated each other, that when they built a house they did not put in the materials they had promised. And when they said they would do something, they did not keep their word. When no one was looking, they stole something. When someone else was not looking, somebody stole the man's wife. All the way along, there were injustices. So to meet the injustice, Hammurabi created a code of ethics. He said very simply, if you stole, you have to put it back and be punished. If the house doesn't stand up, the man who built it will be penalized, and if he does not make a good correction, we'll toss him in prison. Little by little, these common errors were smoked out, not because some one individual was greatly concerned in solving the problems, but because most people couldn't live with the problems until something was done about them. In the Spartan system, Lycurgus became a very prominent figure. He found that the Spartans were rich and powerful and given to luxury, that they were now trotting about as though they owned the earth, that their morals were getting worse as their prosperity grew greater. So he decided to put the whole thing back into its old pattern, the way it was. And he created a system so strict in Sparta that he cut crime down to virtually nothing. And it was very simple. When difficulties arose, they were looked over carefully, and whoever was blamed had the book thrown at him. Probably a rock at that time. And he was punished properly. He couldn't hire a lawyer to get out of it. He couldn't talk himself out of it. He had to face the consequence of his own actions. And also, Lycurgus made self-discipline and the curtailment of luxuries the basis of national strength. Now, we don't particularly want to follow his example, but it doesn't seem that luxury today is improving as much. In fact, we are now suffering from all the ailments that Lycurgus decided he was going to cure. And for 500 years he did cure them. And after he was gone, the process was continued, and for a long time Sparta was more or less a well-disciplined, orderly, low-crime country. But of course, that was long ago. We are supposed to forget these things and not to realize how our forebears solved problems. The great intellectuals tell us, oh, don't worry about the past. We've outgrown all those homely laws. They'll look to the future. And now people are beginning to look toward the future. They don't like what they see because the future doesn't look very attractive. If, however, we realize that back in those days, when the tribal chieftain made the rules, when some oracle spoke the decisions of state, and where all the legislators bowed before the altars of their gods and depended upon divine support for the perpetuation of their priestly and princely activities,